Why would someone collapse under the weight of a problem rather than say three words, "Can you help?" Behavioral science calls it hyper-independence, a psychological pattern where self-reliance stops being a strength and becomes a compulsion. A refusal so deep it feels like identity, not choice. It's more common than it looks. Only 30% of people recognize psychology as a genuine science, which means most of us are managing our own behavior with no framework at all. Hyper-independence doesn't arrive fully formed. Behavioral science traces it to early experiences of betrayal, moments when the people who were supposed to show up simply didn't. When dependency leads to pain early enough, the nervous system learns a brutal equation: needing people equals getting hurt. Attachment researchers call this an avoidant adaptation. The system stops sending the signal that says, "Help me." Here's a misconception worth correcting. This is not common sense. Psychology isn't intuition dressed in jargon. It's a scientific discipline. And hyper-independence is a clinically documented coping pattern. As a coping mechanism, hyper-independence works, at first. Every problem solved alone adds another brick to a wall that feels like protection. Competence becomes armor. Armor becomes a prison. But here's where it gets harder. The wall that kept the pain out also keeps intimacy out. Relationships can't reach someone who has made themselves architecturally unreachable. Culture complicates this further. Hazel Marcus's research demonstrated that psychological experiences vary dramatically across cultures. What reads as strength in one context reads as dysfunction in another. Most behavioral science research draws from weird populations: Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic, which means our models of hyperindependence may not translate universally. In relationships, hyperindependence operates silently. The person shows up, they contribute, but they never let anyone carry anything for them. And over time, that asymmetry erodes the bond. Research on reciprocity in close relationships, including Carol Rusbolt's work on interdependence theory, shows that when one person never receives, the other eventually stops offering. The bridge doesn't collapse dramatically, it quietly cracks. The mental health cost is physiological. Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory established that the nervous system requires co-regulation. It was built to synchronize with other nervous systems, not to run in permanent isolation. But here's a question worth sitting with. Is hyperindependence always a trauma response? Or can it be something the outside world actively rewards? Something we were trained into, not just wounded into? The answer is both. Research on help-seeking stigma, including Cheryl Wood's Giscombe studies on the strong black woman schema, shows that cultures routinely penalize asking and reward self-sufficiency with status. The incentive is structural, not personal. Lee Newman's work on behavioral science and leadership shows that daily emotional states shape performance in measurable ways. A leader who can't ask for help models that silence, and it cascades through everyone below them. Hal Hirschfield's research on the future self shows we often treat our future selves as strangers. Making decisions today, that stranger will have to survive. Hyper-independence is one of those decisions. Remember that phone on the floor. The person who won't reach for it isn't proud or stubborn. They're calibrated, by experience, to believe that reaching will make things worse. Asking for help to the hyper-independent person doesn't feel like a minor social transaction. It feels like standing at the edge of something with no guaranteed floor. The risk feels existential. Here's what behavioral science offers. The fear isn't irrational. It was rational once. It was a precise response to a specific environment. The problem is that the environment changed and the response didn't. The nervous system runs on maps. When early betrayal draws the map, it marks every relationship as dangerous terrain. The hyper-independent person navigates the present using a map drawn in the past. And here's the counterintuitive part. Research on help-seeking behavior, including Ari Nadler's work, shows that asking for help isn't a natural default. It's a practice behavior that requires perceived safety to develop at all. Change doesn't require a revelation. It requires repetition. Small, repeated experiences of safe dependency update the nervous system's prediction, each one a data point that the floor, this time, held. This matters beyond the individual. If you're in a relationship with someone hyper-independent, their silence isn't rejection, it's protection. That distinction changes everything about how you respond. And it matters in every institution that rewards self-sufficiency with status. Behavioral science can shift the emotional climate of a workplace, but only if the people at the top model asking first. Here's the number that stops most people. Studies on help-seeking avoidance find that hyper-independent individuals are significantly more likely to report burnout, yet less likely to seek support, even when it's freely available and directly offered. Research on emotional labor shows that performing self-sufficiency, maintaining the appearance of having everything handled, drains cognitive resources separately from the actual work being done. The mask costs energy the task never required. Dan Siegel's concept of the window of tolerance explains why small asks matter. Each successful low-stakes request for help expands the nervous system's capacity to tolerate vulnerability without triggering a threat response. The window widens with use. Judith Herman's work on trauma recovery draws a clear line. The goal isn't to eliminate protective responses, but to restore choice. Self-reliance built under duress is a resource. The work is making it optional rather than automatic. When your nervous system has been trained to read asking as danger, doing it anyway is a direct override of a deeply encoded prediction. That's what retraining looks like. Not a feeling, but an action taken before the feeling changes. The entry point doesn't have to be dramatic. Researchers studying help-seeking in adults find that the smallest requests, asking a colleague to proofread one paragraph, texting a friend that today was hard, activate the same reciprocity circuits as larger ones. If this pattern is yours, today, make one request you'd normally absorb alone. It doesn't have to be significant. The nervous system doesn't update through insight. It updates through experience. And that experience has to start somewhere.